A breakthrough for scientists after they had a 20-minute conversation with a humpback whale.
There is a sound that has been echoing through the deep ocean for millions of years. It travels through freezing black water, bending around seamounts and canyon walls, moving faster than any sound in air. For most of human history, we had no idea what it meant. We heard it, recorded it, marveled at it, and then admitted defeat. The ocean kept its secret, and the creatures that lived inside it remained, in the most fundamental way, strangers to us. That is no longer true. What has happened in the last few years, at the intersection of marine biology, artificial intelligence, and a kind of scientific audacity that borders on the poetic, is one of the most quietly astonishing developments in the history of human knowledge. Scientists have not just recorded the sounds of whales. They have not simply cataloged them or organized them into neat folders on a hard drive. They have begun to decode them. And what the AI found hidden inside those clicks and pulses is something that no one, not even the researchers who spent decades in the field, was fully prepared to hear. Sperm whales are, by any measure, extraordinary creatures. They are the largest toothed predators on Earth. Their brains are the biggest of any animal that has ever lived, roughly 6 times the mass of a human brain. They dive to depths that would crush a submarine, holding their breath for over an hour as they descend into absolute darkness to hunt squid. They live in tight-knit social groups, raise their young communally, grieve their dead, and appear to form relationships that last decades. They are, in every observable way, profoundly social beings. And they talk. Constantly. The sounds sperm whales produce are called codas, short, rhythmic sequences of clicks that travel enormous distances underwater. These are not the long, haunting songs of humpback whales, though those too have their own majesty. Sperm whale codas are percussive, rapid, almost machine-like to the untrained ear. Click, click, pause, click, click, click. They ripple through the water between animals, between mothers and calves, between old females and young males, between family units spread across miles of open ocean. For a long time, researchers recorded these sounds and did what scientists do when they are genuinely stumped. They wrote careful papers full of measured language and admitted they were not sure what any of it meant. The problem was not motivation. The problem was scale. A single pod of sperm whales can produce thousands of codas in a single day. Over a research season, the data becomes incomprehensible. Over decades, it becomes an ocean of information that no human team could ever hope to analyze with pencil, paper, and patience alone. The mystery stayed a mystery not because no one cared, but because the tools to crack it simply did not exist. The idea that would eventually become Project SETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative, did not begin in a marine biology lab. It began with a question, so strange it almost sounds like the setup to a joke. What if the most alien intelligence we will ever encounter is not orbiting a distant star, but swimming beneath our own oceans right now? Dr. David Gruber, a marine biologist with a reputation for thinking sideways, found himself drawn to SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, not because he believed in little green men, but because of the methodology. SETI researchers had developed powerful tools for detecting and analyzing non-human signals. They were experts at finding structure in noise, at identifying patterns in data streams that had no obvious human logic. Dr. Gruber asked a simple but seismic question. What if we turned those same tools toward the deep ocean? The name he chose for the project was deliberate. SETI. It echoes SETI in a way that is not accidental. It is a statement of philosophy. The belief that there may be non-human minds on this planet worth listening to, and that the effort to understand them is just as serious, just as scientifically rigorous, and just as potentially world-altering as any search for signals from the stars. At the emotional and scientific heart of Project SETI is a man who does not need AI to recognize a sperm whale. Shane Jarrow is a marine biologist who has spent well over a decade studying a single community of sperm whales that returns each year to the waters near the Caribbean island of Dominica. He knows individual animals by their markings, their behaviors, the particular qualities of their vocalizations. He has watched calves be born, watched old matriarchs age and slow, watched the social bonds between animals shift and evolve over years. In 2020, Project SETI officially launched. The funding was substantial, tens of millions of dollars from philanthropic sources who had been convinced, rightly, that what was being proposed here was genuinely historic. And the first major undertaking was something that had never been attempted before: the construction of a permanent, large-scale underwater acoustic monitoring system off the coast of Dominica. The system is built around arrays of hydrophones, underwater microphones, deployed across a wide stretch of ocean floor. These are not simple recording devices. They are precision instruments placed in carefully calculated positions that allow the team to do something remarkable: triangulate the exact source of any sound they pick up. Not just hear a coda, but know which animal produced it, where that animal was when it produced it, what other animals were nearby, and what was happening in the social environment at that moment. This spatial and social context is not a luxury. It is everything. The meaning of any communication system, human or otherwise, is inseparable from context. The same phrase means different things in different situations. You cannot understand what someone is saying without understanding the situation they are saying it in. The hydrophone network gives Project SETI that situational awareness at a level of detail that makes previous research look like listening through a wall. But the hydrophones, as sophisticated as they are, still cannot tell you what a particular whale was doing physically when it made a sound. For that, the team developed a second system: autonomous underwater robots that can approach the whales quietly and attach non-invasive suction cup tags to their backs. These tags are miniature data centers. They record the sounds the tagged animal makes and hears. They track movement, depth, acceleration, and orientation. They capture physiological data. And when they eventually detach and float to the surface, they transmit everything they collected. The challenge of feeding whale sounds to an artificial intelligence is not trivial. You cannot simply play audio to a neural network and ask it to find language. The first step was to convert the acoustic data into visual form, spectrograms, which are images that represent sound frequencies over time. This transformation allowed the AI to apply the same visual pattern recognition capabilities that had made deep learning so powerful in fields like image recognition and medical imaging. The AI's first task was identification and sorting. From the vast stream of underwater audio, which contained not just whale sounds but the constant ambient noise of a living ocean, the system had to learn to isolate sperm whale codas. It had to recognize the characteristic signature of each click, learn to ignore everything else, and extract the codas cleanly enough that their internal structure could be analyzed. This alone took time and enormous computational power. But once the AI could reliably find the codas, it began to do something that surprised even the researchers who built it. It started finding structure that nobody had looked for, because nobody had imagined it was there. The research that emerged from this analysis, published in a paper that circulated through the scientific community with the impact of a depth charge, revealed that sperm whale codas are not simple signals. They are not binary. They are not a fixed vocabulary of a few dozen fixed messages. They are a combinatorial system. They have what the researchers described as the properties of a phonetic alphabet. Sperm whales do not have letters, but they use variations in rhythm, tempo, duration, and what scientists termed ornamentation, subtle additional clicks appended to the beginning or end of a coda, in ways that function analogously to the way phonemes combine in human speech to produce an enormous range of distinct units of meaning. The number of possible unique codas, once these variables are taken into account, runs not into dozens but into thousands. Think about what that means. We have been looking at what we thought was a handful of whale signals and assuming that was the entirety of their communicative range. The AI looked at the same data and found an architecture capable of generating complexity on a scale we had never imagined. If the structural discovery was staggering, what the AI found about how that structure was used was even more so. The team discovered that different whale clans, extended family groups that travel together and share a social history, use distinct dialects. The codas they produce are not identical to those of other clans, even when the underlying structure is the same. There are regional variations, family-specific stylistic patterns, individual signatures. The AI could listen to a recording and, with significant reliability, identify not just that it was hearing a sperm whale, but which family group the whale belonged to. This is not a trivial finding. In human linguistics, dialect is one of the most powerful markers of social identity. The way you speak encodes where you come from, who raised you, what community shaped you. Dialects are not just communication styles. They are identity markers, carriers of cultural memory, signals of belonging. The discovery that sperm whales have dialects means their communication system is doing something far more sophisticated than transmitting simple information. It is transmitting identity. It is transmitting belonging. It is the acoustic expression of a culture that is passed from generation to generation through learning and imitation. The AI also uncovered evidence of what researchers are calling rubato, a concept borrowed from music, referring to subtle, expressive variations in timing. In whale codas, the precise timing of individual clicks within a sequence is not fixed. It varies in ways that appear to carry meaning. A coda with a particular rhythm might mean one thing. That same coda with slightly altered timing might mean something subtly or substantially different. This is the difference between a rigid code and a living language. Rigid codes do not have expressive variation. Languages do. Taken together, these findings shattered a foundational assumption that had quietly governed our relationship to animal communication for centuries. The assumption that complex, generative, socially embedded language was uniquely human. The data says otherwise. And data, unlike assumption, does not care about our comfort. In 2023, the Project SETI team achieved something that a few years ago would have sounded like science fiction. A diver, equipped with a specially designed underwater speaker, descended into the waters near Dominica carrying a specific sperm whale coda. The coda had been identified through the AI analysis as a greeting or social acknowledgement, the whale equivalent, in function if not in precise meaning, of a wave or a hello. The diver played the coda, and a whale answered. Not randomly, not coincidentally. The whale in the area responded with the same coda, initiating a brief back-and-forth exchange. The researchers monitored the exchange from the surface, recording everything, running it through their analysis in real time. What they saw was structurally consistent with what the AI had taught them to recognize as intentional, responsive communication. It was a single exchange. It was brief. It did not carry the weight of a philosophical conversation, but its significance was enormous. It demonstrated two things simultaneously. First, that the AI's analysis of the coda structure was accurate enough to be practically useful. They had not just identified a pattern in the abstract, they had identified something with enough genuine meaning that a wild whale recognized and responded to it. Second, it demonstrated that the gap between species, while vast, is not unbridgeable. Progress at this level does not come without questions that are harder to answer than scientific ones. And the Project SETI team has not tried to avoid them. If we develop the ability to communicate with whales, not just to play back sounds and observe responses, but to conduct something resembling genuine dialogue, what are our obligations? The mere fact that we can do something has never, historically, been a sufficient justification for doing it. The history of human interaction with the natural world is full of well-intentioned interventions that produced catastrophic consequences. Could regular human-initiated communication alter the social dynamics of wild whale populations? Could it change the codas themselves, introducing new patterns that spread through the population and shift the very dialects the AI worked so hard to map? Could it create dependencies, confusions, disruptions in behaviors that are essential to survival? These are not hypothetical concerns. They are the kinds of questions that responsible scientists ask before they act, not after. The Project SETI team has been explicit about the framework they are trying to build, communication on the whale's terms, in the whale's own language, at a pace the whales choose, in contexts where the whales can disengage. They are not trying to teach whales to perform for humans. They are trying to learn what whales might want to say to each other, and eventually perhaps to us. There is a moral dimension here that goes beyond caution. If sperm whales have language, not metaphorical language, not simplified signaling, but a genuine, generative, culturally transmitted communication system, then they are beings with an inner life of a kind we have not previously been required to take seriously. That changes things, not just scientifically, but ethically and legally. A number of legal scholars and animal rights advocates have already begun to argue that the Project SETI findings have implications for how we classify and protect these animals. The conversation is just beginning, and it will not stay comfortable. The tools developed by Project SETI are not going to stay in the ocean. The methodology, using large language models and deep learning to find structure in complex, non-human signal systems, is applicable to any domain where there is a signal and a question about what it means. The team has already drawn explicit connections to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. If we ever detect a signal from another civilization, we will be facing exactly the same problem. A stream of information from a mind completely unlike our own, operating under assumptions we cannot share, using a system of meaning we have never encountered. The Project SETI approach, find structure first, build context second, attempt translation third, offers a framework that did not exist before. But the implications closer to home are equally significant. The same tools are now being applied to other species. Dolphins, whose vocalizations share some structural similarities with sperm whale codas, are already under study. Elephant rumbles, which travel through both air and ground, are being analyzed with similar methods. Bat echolocation, crow calls, prairie dog alarm systems that appear to encode specific information about predator type and size, all of these are now candidates for the kind of deep structural analysis that cracked open the sperm whale coda. There is a moment in the history of every major scientific revolution when the implications escape the laboratory and enter ordinary consciousness. When the Copernican model of the solar system moved from astronomical tables to public understanding, it did not just change the science. It changed how people understood their place in existence. The same happened with evolution, with plate tectonics, with the discovery of the double helix. What Project SETI has begun has that quality. It is not simply a technical achievement, impressive as that achievement is. It is a philosophical reckoning with a question we have been avoiding for a long time. What if we are not the only kind of mind that matters on this planet? We built our civilization on an assumption of uniqueness. We told ourselves that language, culture, social complexity, the transmission of knowledge across generations, these were human things, and their presence in us was what justified our dominance over every other form of life. The data coming out of Dominica suggests that assumption was wrong. Not metaphorically wrong. Factually, demonstrably wrong. Sperm whales have language. They have dialects. They have culture. They have what appear to be emotional lives shaped by their social bonds. They communicate about those bonds in a system whose complexity we are only beginning to understand. And they have been doing all of this quietly, in the dark of the deep ocean, for far longer than humans have existed. The researchers at Project SETI are not philosophers or ethicists by training. They are scientists, but they understand what they have found, and they know it means something beyond the data. Shane Jarrow, who has spent over a decade watching whale families form and dissolve and reform, who has given names to animals and watched those animals age and die, already knew this in his bones. The AI has now given the rest of us evidence that he was right. Project SETI is not finished. It is, in the truest sense, just beginning. The hydrophone network continues to collect data. The AI models continue to train and improve. The team is developing more sophisticated underwater communication devices, refining the catalog of codas, working toward the ability to produce whale language in real time, rather than just replay it. There are plans to expand the research to other whale species. There are plans to build open-access databases so that researchers around the world can contribute to the analysis. There are plans, ambitious, long-term, not guaranteed to succeed, to reach a point where a two-way conversation is possible. Not a stunt, not a performance, but a genuine exchange of information between a human and a non-human intelligence. Whether that will ever fully happen, no one can say. The ocean is large, the whales are complex, and language, even human language, still holds mysteries after thousands of years of study. But the trajectory is clear, and it is pointing somewhere unprecedented. We are learning to listen. And the ocean, for the first time in human history, is beginning to answer. The clicks are still there, still echoing through the cold, dark water. They always were. We just did not have the ears to hear them properly. Now we do. And what we are hearing is telling us something we needed to know, that the world we thought we understood is stranger, richer, and far more inhabited by genuine minds than we ever allowed ourselves to believe. The whales were never just animals. They were waiting for us to figure that out. And now, at last, we have.